When my daughter got married, I kept my $9 million inheritance secret. Then her husband arrived with a notary. The day my daughter Emily got married should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I realized that keeping one secret had saved my family. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 68 years old, a retired school principal, and the widow of a man who believed that character always mattered more than money. 3 months before Emily's wedding, my father passed away peacefully at 94. He wasn't famous. He wasn't flashy. He lived in the same modest farmhouse for over 50 years. Everyone assumed he was comfortable, but certainly not wealthy. Even I believed that. Then his attorney called. Sitting in a quiet office, I listened in complete disbelief as he explained that my father had quietly invested in farmland, energy companies, and dividend stocks for decades. His portfolio had grown far beyond anyone's imagination. After taxes and expenses, I inherited just over $9 million. I couldn't speak. The attorney smiled. Your father specifically instructed us not to announce this publicly. Then he handed me a handwritten letter. It simply read, "Money changes people. Let it reveal them before you reveal it." I folded the letter and placed it in my purse. I didn't fully understand those words then. I would soon. Emily was 32. She was kind, hardworking, and a pediatric nurse. She had never cared about expensive things. When she introduced me to Daniel, he seemed perfect. Polite, successful, confident. He worked in real estate and always knew exactly what to say. Maybe too exactly. Small moments began bothering me. Whenever we had dinner together, Daniel somehow steered every conversation toward money. Home values, investments, retirement accounts, inheritance laws. At first I dismissed it. People talk about finances, but then the questions became personal. So, Margaret, your father owned quite a bit of land, didn't he? Did he leave you anything? Have you updated your will? I laughed them off. My father left wonderful memories. That answer disappointed him more than he tried to hide. A week before the wedding, I overheard Daniel talking on his phone. I don't think there's much money. We'll see after the wedding. The sentence lingered in my mind. Still, Emily looked happier than I'd ever seen her. I refused to ruin her wedding over suspicion. The ceremony was beautiful. Friends laughed. Family cried. Emily looked radiant. Her father would have been so proud. During the reception, Daniel hugged me tightly. For just a second he whispered, "We're family now." Something about his tone made me uncomfortable. It sounded less like love, and more like ownership. I ignored the feeling. The newlyweds left for their honeymoon. For 2 peaceful weeks everything seemed normal. Then, exactly 3 days after they returned, my doorbell rang. Standing outside were Emily, Daniel, and a man carrying a black leather briefcase. Daniel smiled broadly. "Margaret, this is Mr. Lawson." The man nodded. "I'm a licensed notary." My stomach tightened. No one brings a notary to a casual family visit. Daniel stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He carefully placed several folders on my dining table. Emily looked confused. "Daniel, what is all this?" He squeezed her hand. "Just paperwork, sweetheart." Then he looked directly at me. "It'll only take a few signatures." I hadn't even opened the first folder. But deep inside, I already knew exactly why they had come. I slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. The notary quietly arranged several neatly clipped documents across my dining table. Daniel stood beside him with an expression that looked more excited than nervous. Emily frowned. "Daniel, what paperwork?" He smiled confidently. "Just some family planning." I picked up the first page. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Family Asset Protection Agreement." I looked at Daniel. "What exactly is this?" He leaned forward. "It's really simple. Since you're getting older, we thought it would be smart to transfer your house into a family trust. That way, if anything happens to you, everything will already be taken care of." Emily's eyebrows shot up. "My mom never asked for this." Daniel laughed lightly. "I'm just trying to help." I continued reading. The more I read, the colder I felt. The trust named Daniel as the primary trustee. He would control the property, any future proceeds from its sale, and other assets that might later become part of the estate. Other assets. Those 2 words were carefully hidden among pages of legal language. He didn't know about the $9 million. But he was making sure that if I ever inherited or acquired anything, he would have control over it. I placed the papers back on the table. "Who prepared these?" "My attorney." "And who paid him?" "I did." Emily looked from me to Daniel. "You hired a lawyer without telling me." I wanted to surprise you. A surprise? Her voice became sharper. You brought a lawyer and a notary to my mother's house without asking her. Daniel's smile faded slightly. Emily, don't overreact. I stood up. I won't be signing anything today. Daniel crossed his arms. Margaret, this is for everyone's benefit. No. His friendly expression disappeared. You should think about your daughter. I am. The room fell silent. The notary quietly closed his briefcase. I'll wait outside, he said politely. As soon as the front door closed, Daniel's tone changed completely. You know, this house will eventually belong to Emily anyway. It will belong to whoever I decide. His jaw tightened. I've invested a lot in this family. I almost laughed. The wedding had been 3 weeks ago. What exactly have you invested? Emily stared at him. Daniel, why are you acting like this? He ignored her. Instead, he looked directly at me. I know your father owned valuable land. My heartbeat remained steady. So, I think you're hiding something. I smiled calmly. Am I? For several long seconds he searched my face. Then he finally spoke. If there's money, it belongs with the family. No, I answered quietly. It belongs to the person who earned it, or inherited it. Emily looked completely lost. What money? What are you talking about? Daniel quickly recovered. Nothing. I'm just saying families should trust each other. I walked to the front door and opened it. This meeting is over. Emily apologized with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I hugged her. I know you didn't. Daniel walked out without saying another word. But before getting into his car, he turned around. This conversation isn't finished. I watched the car disappear down the street. Then I went inside, locked the door, and took my father's handwritten letter from the drawer. I read the final sentence again. Money changes people. Let it reveal them before you reveal it. For the first time, I truly understood what he meant. For the next 2 weeks, Daniel didn't call. He didn't apologize. He didn't mention the trust paperwork again. Instead, something far more unsettling happened. Emily stopped visiting. At first, I assumed she was busy settling into married life. She texted occasionally, but her messages became shorter and less personal. Then one evening, she called. Mom, can I come over? Her voice sounded strained. Of course. She arrived alone. The moment she stepped inside, I could tell she'd been crying. What happened? She sat silently for nearly a minute before speaking. Daniel keeps asking me about Grandpa. I stayed quiet. He wants to know how much land Grandpa owned, whether he had investments, whether he left you anything. I sighed. And what did you tell him? The truth. I said I don't know. Emily looked embarrassed. He doesn't believe me. She admitted that Daniel had been searching online property records, asking distant relatives about Grandpa's finances, and even driving past the old farmhouse. He says families always hide money. That sentence chilled me. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was obsession. I reached across the table and held Emily's hand. Has he ever pressured you before? She hesitated. Then she nodded. He wanted me to add his name to my savings account. My heart sank. I refused. He got angry. Has he threatened you? No. But he keeps saying that married couples shouldn't keep financial secrets. I chose my next words carefully. Emily, if someone truly loves you, they don't measure your value by your bank account. She lowered her eyes. I know. A week later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Mr. Harris, my father's longtime attorney. I thought you should know something, he said. Someone called our office pretending to represent your family. They asked whether your father's estate had been fully distributed. Did you tell them anything? Absolutely not. Who was it? They wouldn't identify themselves. I didn't need proof. I already suspected the answer. That evening I opened my safe and looked at the inheritance documents again. $9 million. Enough to change lives. Enough to destroy them. I made a decision. The money would remain secret. Not until I knew exactly who deserved my trust. The next Sunday, Emily called again. Her voice trembled. Mom, Daniel wants us to come over tomorrow. For what? He says he wants to apologize. I smiled sadly. Do you believe him? There was a long silence. I don't know anymore. Something told me that apology wasn't the real reason for the invitation. And for the first time since the wedding, I began preparing for The next afternoon, I drove to Emily and Daniel's house. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with newly built homes and perfectly trimmed lawns. From the outside, everything looked peaceful. Inside, it felt different. Daniel greeted me with an unusually warm smile. Margaret, I'm glad you came. His friendliness seemed rehearsed. Emily hugged me, but I could tell she was nervous. The dining table was already set for lunch. Halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." I nodded politely. "I'm listening. I got carried away with the paperwork. I only wanted to protect the family." I smiled. "I appreciate the apology." For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. Then he reached into a folder beside his chair. "I did bring one small document." Emily looked shocked. "Daniel, it's nothing serious." He slid a single sheet across the table. "This just confirms that if you ever decide to sell your house, Emily will receive the proceeds instead of strangers." I didn't even touch the paper. "You said there wouldn't be any documents." "It's only one page." "No." His smile faded. "Why won't you even read it?" "Because you ignored my answer the first time." The room became silent. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I think you're hiding something." I calmly sipped my tea. "That's your opinion." He looked directly into my eyes. "Your father didn't die poor." Emily stared at him. "Daniel, stop." "No, I want the truth." He pulled several printed pages from another folder. I searched county property records. He placed them on the table. "Your father owned land in 3 counties." "I know. Some of it was sold before he died." "Yes. So where did the money go?" I folded my hands. "My father's finances are none of your business." Daniel's voice grew louder. "I'm family. You're my daughter's husband." "Same thing." "No." Emily stood up. "Enough." Both of us looked at her. "I married you because I loved you, not because I expected money from my mother." Daniel tried to interrupt. She raised her hand. "No. You listen. You've spent weeks asking about Grandpa's estate. You hired a lawyer. You brought a notary. You searched property records. And now you're interrogating my mother." Tears filled her eyes. "Is that why you married me?" Daniel looked stunned. "Emily, that's ridiculous." "Then answer me." He couldn't. The silence lasted nearly 30 seconds. Finally, he muttered, "I just wanted financial security." Emily shook her head. "No. You wanted control." I quietly stood. "I think I should leave." Emily walked me to the front door. As she hugged me, she whispered, "I think I made a terrible mistake." I held her tightly. "No matter what happens, you'll always have a home with me." As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Daniel was standing alone in the doorway, watching my car disappear. His expression wasn't regret, it was frustration, and I had a feeling he still wasn't finished. 3 days passed without a word from Daniel. Emily texted me every evening. She said they were barely speaking. The house felt tense. Daniel spent hours locked in his home office, making phone calls he refused to explain. Then, early Thursday morning, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Turner. "Margaret, there's a man taking pictures of your house." I looked through my front window. A gray SUV was parked across the street. A man stood beside it with a camera, photographing my home, the garage, and even the backyard gate. By the time I stepped outside, he drove away. An hour later, Emily called. "Mom, I found something." "What is it?" I was cleaning Daniel's office. Her voice shook. "I found a folder with your name on it." My stomach tightened. What was inside? Copies of your property records, tax information, old family photos, Grandpa's land deeds, and handwritten notes. What kind of notes? Emily hesitated. He wrote things like, find hidden assets, possible inheritance, pressure before estate planning. I closed my eyes. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was a plan. "Emily, leave the folder where you found it. Don't confront him yet. But, please." That evening, there was another knock at my door. This time, it was a private investigator. He introduced himself politely. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Collins. Can I help you? I was hired to verify information about your financial assets." "And who hired you?" "I'm not allowed to disclose that." I smiled faintly. "I think I already know." He nodded slightly. "I suspected you might." Before leaving, he quietly added, "You seem like a decent woman. I'd advise you to speak with your attorney." After he left, I immediately called my father's lawyer. Mr. Harris listened carefully. When I finished, he said, "I was afraid this might happen." "What do you mean?" "Your father anticipated that someone might eventually try to pressure you for money. There are protections already in place." "What protections?" "I'm afraid I can't explain them over the phone." "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" "I'll be there." As I hung up, I looked once more at my father's handwritten letter. He hadn't just left me money. He had left me a plan. And tomorrow, I was finally going to learn what it was. The next morning, I arrived at Mr. Harris office 15 minutes early. He greeted me warmly but looked unusually serious. Margaret, your father expected something like this. He unlocked a fireproof cabinet and removed a sealed envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting. I was instructed not to give you this unless someone tried to pressure you over your inheritance. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another letter. If you're reading this, someone has shown more interest in your money than in you. Don't be angry. Let their actions speak for themselves. I swallowed hard and continued reading. My father had created 2 separate trusts years earlier. The first held the inheritance. The second contained strict instructions. Emily would receive a generous inheritance, but only if she requested it freely, without coercion. Anyone proven to have manipulated or pressured her or me for financial gain could not control or access the trust. An independent trustee, not a family member, would manage everything. I looked up. So even if Daniel knew about the money, Mr. Harris nodded. He couldn't control a single dollar. Relief washed over me. Then Mr. Harris handed me another document. There's more. What is it? A confidential memo your father left for me. It read, if my granddaughter ever finds herself trapped in a marriage motivated by money, help her protect herself first, not the fortune. Tears filled my eyes. Even after his death, my father was still protecting us. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Mom, can you come? What's wrong? I confronted Daniel, and he admitted he thought our family was hiding millions. I stopped walking. He actually said that, yes. He said once the money became part of the family, we'd never have to work again. I closed my eyes. The secret was still safe. But Daniel had already revealed exactly who he was. Emily spoke again. I don't think I can stay with him anymore. I answered gently, come home. There was a long silence. Then she whispered, I'm on my way. An hour later, Emily pulled into my driveway. Her car was packed with suitcases, a few boxes, and the wedding photos she had taken down from the walls. The moment she stepped out, I hugged her. This time, she didn't try to be strong. She cried, I'm so embarrassed, Mom. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. I thought I knew him. So did many people. Inside the house, we made tea and sat quietly. After a while, Emily told me everything. A week after the wedding, Daniel had started asking about family wealth almost every day. At first, he joked about inheriting Grandpa's fortune. Then the jokes became plans. He talked about buying luxury cars, a larger house, early retirement, vacation homes. Whenever Emily reminded him that no one had inherited millions, he became irritated. He kept saying, your mother is hiding something. 2 days earlier, she had finally asked him a direct question. If my family had no money, would you still have married me? He hadn't answered. Instead, he walked out of the room. That silence had given her the answer she feared most. As we talked, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Then another. Finally, a message arrived. Tell Emily to come home. We're not finished talking. Emily read it and quietly shook her head. No. That evening, someone knocked on my front door. I checked the security camera. Daniel. Alone. I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. I just want to speak with my wife. Emily stepped beside me. I'm here. Daniel looked exhausted. You've overreacted. Emily folded her arms. Have I? I only wanted us to have a secure future. She replied calmly. You wanted my mother's assets before you cared about our marriage. That's not true. Then why did you hire a notary 3 weeks after our wedding? He had no answer. She continued. Why did you investigate Grandpa's estate? Silence. Why did you hire a private investigator? Daniel's face changed. Who told you that? Emily looked at him sadly. You never denied it. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Daniel sighed. I made mistakes. Yes, Emily said. You did. Then she removed her wedding ring. She placed it gently in his hand. I deserve a husband who trusts people more than money. Daniel stared at the ring. I can fix this. Emily shook her head. You had every chance. She slowly closed the front door. As the lock clicked into place, she leaned against it and took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, she looked free. The next morning, the house was peaceful. Emily slept later than she had in weeks. When she finally came downstairs, she looked tired, but lighter. Over breakfast she said quietly, I'm filing for divorce. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'll support you every step of the way. That afternoon, She met with a family law attorney. When she returned, she looked relieved. The lawyer said leaving early was the smartest decision. We don't have children, and we kept our finances mostly separate. For the first time since the wedding, I felt hopeful. But Daniel wasn't ready to let go. Over the next several days, he sent flowers, long emails, and dozens of text messages. Each one sounded apologetic, yet every message eventually returned to the same question. Can we at least talk about your grandfather's estate? Emily stopped replying. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, Daniel showed up at my father's old farmhouse. The property manager called me immediately. Mrs. Collins, a man is asking questions about the previous owner. Did he identify himself? He said he was family. I sighed. I'm on my way. When I arrived, Daniel was standing near the old barn. He smiled awkwardly. I just wanted closure. I looked at him calmly. No, Daniel, you wanted answers. He didn't deny it. Instead, he asked the question he'd been chasing for weeks. Did your father leave you millions? I smiled. My finances are private. Then why won't you answer? Because you have no right to ask. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he seemed to realize that no amount of pressure would change my answer. He turned and walked back to his car without another word. As he drove away, I looked across the quiet fields my father had loved. I could almost hear his voice. Money reveals people. He had been right. Daniel had revealed himself long before he ever learned the truth. And because I had stayed silent, everything my father worked for was still safe. 2 months passed. The divorce moved forward without much conflict. Since the marriage had been short and most assets were separate, there was little to divide. Daniel contacted Emily a few more times. Then the messages stopped. Rumors spread through town that his real estate business was struggling. Several clients had chosen to work with other agents after hearing about his behavior. Emily never celebrated his misfortune. She simply wanted peace. One Saturday afternoon, she joined me at the old farmhouse. Together we cleaned the porch, planted flowers, and laughed for the first time in months. As the sun began to set, Emily turned to me. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Did Grandpa really leave you an inheritance? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Yes. She nodded quietly. I thought so, but I never wanted to tell you until I knew why you were asking. Emily reached for my hand. I'm not asking because I want anything. I know. I'm asking because I hope you enjoy it. Those simple words brought tears to my eyes. She wasn't curious about the amount. She wasn't asking for a share. She only wanted me to be happy. That was the moment I knew my father had been right to trust her. I took a deep breath. Emily, your grandfather left me $9 million. She stared at me in complete shock. $9 million, I nodded. She sat silently for nearly a minute. Finally, she laughed. I can't believe it. Then she hugged me tightly. You know what? What? I'm glad Daniel never knew. So am I. Emily smiled. Because if he had, he never would have stopped. For the first time since the wedding, there were no secrets between us. Only trust. And that, I realized, was worth far more than $9 million. 6 months later, life looked completely different. Emily had finalized her divorce and returned to the children's hospital she loved. Instead of dwelling on the past, she poured her energy into caring for young patients and rebuilding her confidence. Watching her smile again was the greatest gift I could have received. One afternoon, Mr. Harris invited us to his office. There's one last matter your father wanted completed, he said. He handed Emily a sealed envelope addressed in her grandfather's handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a letter. My dear Emily, if this letter reaches you, it means you proved that your heart could not be bought. I hope you never measure people by what they own, only by who they are. Both of us were in tears. Mr. Harris smiled gently. Your grandfather also left instructions for the inheritance. He explained that part of the money would establish a scholarship for students who wanted to become nurses and teachers, two professions my father deeply admired. Another portion would restore the old farmhouse and keep it in the family for future generations. The rest would remain invested, providing long-term financial security for Emily and any children she might have one day. Emily looked at me. Grandpa thought of everything. He always did. Over the next year, we honored his wishes. The scholarship helped hard-working students who otherwise couldn't afford college. The farmhouse became a place where family gathered every summer. Instead of buying luxury cars or extravagant homes, we lived much as we always had, comfortably, gratefully, and without showing off. One evening, while sitting on the farmhouse porch, Emily asked, "Mom, do you ever regret keeping the inheritance secret?" I smiled and looked across the fields. "Not for a second. If you'd told everyone, things might have been very different." "They would have. But then we never would have known who truly loved us." She nodded. "The money didn't ruin our family. No, it revealed the truth." Years later, when people asked how our family stayed so close despite everything we'd been through, I always gave the same answer. Character is the greatest inheritance anyone can leave behind. The $9 million changed our future. But my father's wisdom changed our lives. And in the end, that was the real fortune he left us. Nearly a year had passed since Emily walked away from her marriage. Life had finally become peaceful again. The farmhouse was full of laughter, the scholarship fund was helping students, and the painful memories of Daniel slowly faded into the background. One crisp autumn morning, I was drinking coffee on the front porch when a black sedan stopped at the gate. A man in a gray suit stepped out. He carried a leather briefcase and introduced himself politely. "Mrs. Collins." "Yes, my name is Richard Evans. I'm an attorney." My heart skipped a beat. "I don't believe we've met." "We haven't." He handed me a business card. "I represent Daniel Brooks." The name alone was enough to darken the morning. "What does Daniel want now?" Richard sighed. "He asked me to deliver a formal settlement proposal." "I have nothing to settle with him." "I understand." He opened his briefcase and handed me a sealed envelope. "I was instructed to give this to you personally." After he left, I carried the envelope inside. Emily had just arrived for lunch. She saw the lawyer's business card on the table. "Mom, was that Daniel's attorney?" I nodded. She looked uneasy. "What now?" I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a demand. Daniel claimed that during the marriage, he had been misled about our family's financial position. He insisted that if a large inheritance existed before the wedding, it should have been disclosed because it influenced financial decisions made during the marriage. At the bottom of the letter was a proposal. If we paid him $500,000, he would agree not to pursue any further legal action. Emily stared at the page in disbelief. "He's trying to blackmail us." I folded the letter calmly. "No, he's trying to intimidate us." Then I smiled. "But he has no idea who he's dealing with." I reached for my phone and called Mr. Harris. When he answered, I said only one sentence. "I think it's time for phase 2. Mr. Harris paused for a moment. Then he replied, "I've been expecting this call." Mr. Harris arrived at my house the following morning carrying 2 thick folders. He placed them on the dining table. I had a feeling Daniel wouldn't give up. Emily looked worried. "Can he really sue us?" Mr. Harris smiled. "He can file a lawsuit." He paused. "But winning it is an entirely different matter." He opened the first folder. Inside were copies of the trust documents, dated months before Emily's wedding. "The inheritance legally belongs to Margaret. Daniel has no ownership rights over it." Emily let out a sigh of relief. Mr. Harris opened the second folder. "This one is more interesting." Inside were emails, certified records, and notes documenting every attempt Daniel had made to obtain financial information after the wedding. The notary visit, the trust agreement, the private investigator, the calls to my office, the property searches, everything had been recorded. Mr. Harris leaned back. "If Daniel files a lawsuit, these records will become evidence." Emily looked stunned. "You kept all of this?" "I've practiced law for 40 years, he replied. "People leave paper trails." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I answered and placed the call on speaker. "Margaret," he said confidently, "have you read my proposal?" "Yes, and my attorney has read it too." There was a brief silence. "I hope you're making the right decision." "I am. We can settle quietly," I replied calmly. "There will be no payment." His voice hardened. "Then I'll see you in court." Before I could answer, Mr. Harris spoke loudly enough for Daniel to hear. "Mr. Brooks, this is Attorney William Harris. We welcome any legal action. We also look forward to presenting the court with your notary documents, your asset investigations, your private investigator, and every communication you've made regarding Mrs. Collins' inheritance." The line went completely silent. 5 long seconds passed. Then, click. Daniel had hung up. Mr. Harris smiled for the first time that day. "I don't think we'll be hearing from him for a while." Emily looked at me and laughed, a genuine laugh I hadn't heard in over a year. For the first time, it felt like the shadow Daniel had cast over our lives was finally beginning to disappear. A week passed. Daniel never filed the lawsuit. Instead, his attorney contacted Mr. Harris with a short letter. Daniel was withdrawing every claim. There would be no lawsuit. No settlement. Demand. No further contact. Emily smiled when she heard the news, but I wasn't ready to celebrate. People who are obsessed with money don't always quit so easily, I said. Mr. Harris agreed. Stay cautious. 2 days later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Daniel's older sister, Rebecca. Mrs. Collins, may I meet you? Curious, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe that afternoon. Rebecca looked embarrassed. I'm here to apologize. You don't owe me an apology. I do. She lowered her eyes. Daniel has always chased money. Even before he met Emily. She explained that years earlier, Daniel had broken off another engagement after discovering the woman's family wasn't wealthy. Later, he dated someone whose parents owned a successful business. When that relationship ended, he immediately began searching for another, better opportunity. I listened in silence. Rebecca shook her head. Our parents warned him for years that greed would destroy his life. It finally did. She nodded. I wish he had listened. Before leaving, she handed me a small envelope. What's this? A letter. From Daniel. No, from me. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for protecting Emily when my brother failed to love her the way she deserved. When I arrived home, Emily was watering flowers in the garden. I handed her the note. She read it quietly. Then she looked up. For the first time, quote. I don't feel angry anymore. What do you feel? She smiled softly. Free. I smiled back. So do I. As the sun set behind the old farmhouse, I realized something my father had understood long ago. Money could attract people. Character determined who stayed, and our family had finally found peace. Spring arrived with warm sunshine and fresh beginnings. For the first time in years, the farmhouse felt completely alive again. Emily spent weekends helping restore the old barn, while I managed the scholarship foundation my father had dreamed of. One afternoon, Mr. Harris called. Margaret, I have some good news. What is it? The first group of scholarship recipients has been selected. A week later, we attended a small ceremony. There were no television cameras or reporters, just grateful students and their families. One young woman approached Emily with tears in her eyes. I wanted to become a nurse, but my family couldn't afford college. Emily smiled. My grandfather would have been proud to help you. The young woman hugged her. At that moment, I realized something important. The inheritance wasn't changing our lifestyle. It was changing other people's lives. Months later, while organizing old boxes in the attic, Emily found another small wooden chest that had belonged to her grandfather. Inside were faded photographs, military medals, and a worn leather notebook. On the first page he had written, "True wealth isn't measured by what you keep. It's measured by what you leave behind." Emily closed the notebook and smiled. He never stopped teaching us. That evening, we placed the notebook beside his framed photograph in the living room. As we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily asked, "Mom, do you think Grandpa knew all this would happen?" I looked across the fields. I don't think he knew exactly what would happen. But I think he understood people. Emily nodded. He certainly understood Daniel. We both laughed softly. For the first time since the wedding, Daniel's name no longer brought anger. Only a reminder of a lesson we would never forget. Some inherit money, some inherit wisdom. We were fortunate enough to inherit both. And that, more than the $9 million, became our family's greatest treasure.